You mentioned that Hamill was handsome, didn't you? Now I understand. She teases him for praising his own past appearance, but he merely crosses his arms defensively, insisting that he was quite attractive back in the day. Her playful expression then shifts, turning serious. She questions why he is revealing all of this to her, warning him that it's futile if he's hoping to gain something from her. She states plainly that she has no idea where Sienna is. Eugene reassures her that isn't his motive. He gazes at her with a gentle, sincere expression. I have known you for 2 years now, and I've felt this way since the very start. You remind me so much of Sienna, both in your appearance and your personality. Mare becomes visibly flustered, fidgeting as she clarifies that it is only because she was modeled after Sienna's childhood self. Eugene reaches out and gently pats her on the head. He then retracts his hand, a teasing smile playing on his lips. Did I overstep just now? Mare's face flushes a deep red as she averts her gaze. I shall forgive you, but only this one time. She stammers, because you, I mean Hamill, was Lady Sienna's comrade. Eugene's smile softens into something warmer. He then poses a question that has been weighing heavily on his mind. Do you believe Sienna is dead? Mare immediately shakes her head, waving her hands, frantically in denial. Absolutely not. Eugene nods in agreement. Sienna isn't the type to perish without at least leaving behind a will. Therefore, I'm going to find her. As he speaks these words, ethereal images of his former comrades Sienna, Vermouth, Anise, and Molon materialize behind him. His thoughts drift to all of them. Sienna, Molon, Anise, bickering, fighting, and traveling together by his side. He is certain of it. They are all still out there, somewhere in this world. He clenches his fist, his eyes burning with a renewed sense of purpose. I will find every last one of them. Mare looks up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning hope. You are going to bring Lady Sienna back? She asks, her question laced with 200 years of yearning. Eugene offers a warm smile. Don't you miss her as well? For him, this is far more than just a mission. It's about bringing a family back together, no matter how dysfunctional they were. Mare stammers, a delicate blush coloring her cheeks as she whispers, Yes, of course I do. The very notion is almost too staggering for her to fully comprehend. All the more reason to drag her back, Eugene declares with a mischievous grin, adding, Sienna is such a piece of work, don't you think? Abandoning her own familiar spirit to solitude for more than 2 centuries, Mare instantly springs to her defense, becoming defensive and insisting he not speak ill of her creator. But Eugene simply scoffs, retorting, I'm allowed. You have no idea she gave me 300 years ago. It's the kind of familiar bickering that only the oldest and closest of friends could possibly share. But then, Mare's entire demeanor shifts, her expression turning grave. She has to be absolutely certain. She meets his gaze directly, her eyes unwavering. About you being Hamill. Can you swear it before witchcraft? Yeah, he agrees without a moment's hesitation, but with a single, crucial condition. Can you stop calling me the fool? Even after all this time, that despised nickname still manages to get under his skin. The lighthearted atmosphere evaporates in an instant, replaced by a profound solemnity. They stand before the luminous orb of witchcraft, the very core of Sienna's enduring legacy. Eugene raises his hand, his voice ringing out, clear and resolute. My name is Eugene. In my past life, I was Hamill. I swear upon my blood and the honor of the Lionheart name that I am telling the absolute truth. As he speaks these words, witchcraft itself responds. A wave of pure, azure energy washes over them, causing Mare's eyes to glow with its power. The ancient artifact has acknowledged his solemn oath. The truth is now undeniable. With this profound understanding established between them, Mare decides it is time to reveal a secret of her own. She begins to explain that there is a place deep within witchcraft that no one has ever managed to reach. It is where information is recorded at its very root. She assures him that their conversation today will be safely stored there, completely hidden from the rest of the world. Taking a deep breath, she continues, What I'm about to tell you is also something that no one in all of Eroth knows. There were signs, she begins, her voice low, just before Lady Sienna disappeared. Eugene's eyes widen in shock, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. What? Mare starts to recount the painful memory. 1 week before Sienna vanished, we were right here, on this very of the library. Suddenly, Sienna collapsed, crying out in agony. When Mare rushed to her side, frantically asking what was wrong, Sienna managed to tell her that her familiar spirit had just perished, a familiar spirit that she had secretly placed as a guardian at Hamill's grave. Mare can still recall the cold, terrifying rage that contorted Sienna's face as she realized someone had desecrated his final resting place. The news strikes Eugene like a bolt of lightning. A grave? I have a grave, Mare confirms it. Sienna disappeared. Fearing it was an incredibly sensitive topic, Mare buried the memory deep within witchcraft, a place where the truth of how one becomes strongest, Manhwa hides its past, concealing it from everyone. She explains that she never wanted to cause trouble for Sienna by revealing a secret she had fought so desperately to protect. But since you are truly Hamill, Mare says, looking up at him with resolve, I believe you deserve to know the truth. Eugene is still reeling from the revelation, the words echoing in his mind. Asterisk, my grave asterisk. It was a concept he'd never even considered. He had always assumed his body was utterly annihilated by the Lich's curse, a dark magic from the Demon King designed to obliterate both body and soul. Mer begins to lay out the logic. The curse was meant to be absolute, yet his soul endured and was reborn. It stands to reason, then, that his body must have also survived. His very existence is the undeniable proof. Right, Eugene breathes, the disparate pieces of the puzzle finally locking into place. An astonishing new possibility dawns on him. Sienna. She might have been instrumental in my reincarnation. Later that night, Eugene finds himself through the lamp-dappled streets of Aroth, his mind a whirlwind of speculation. If Sienna truly made me a grave, and that grave is concealed somewhere, where would she have placed it? He reasons it must be a location of great significance, not simply the place where he fell. Then, a startling thought strikes him, causing his eyes to widen in disbelief. Could it be my homeland? At that precise moment, a smooth voice cuts through the silence, calling his name. His brow furrowed in deep annoyance. It is none other than the Black Tower Master, Balzac Ludbeth. I was aware you were following me, Eugene states flatly, making no effort to conceal his irritation. I was simply choosing to ignore you. Balzac offers a slick, unbothered smile. You never appear pleased to see me. Is the fault entirely mine? Eugene's response is brutally direct. Yes. Balzac says he caught wind of the news that Eugene is departing for the Luhar Kingdom and the vast Nahama Desert. I must admit, I'm concerned, Balzac says, tapping a hand to his chin. He points out that the northern Luhar region lies perilously close to the demon realm of Helmuth. And what of it? Eugene retorts, his guard instantly raised. Balzac explains that the prestigious Lionheart name carries no weight in that territory. While Luhar once banned all demons, the royal family reversed that policy a mere 5 years ago. He then reveals that Helmuth is far from a united front. Many demons there do not pledge allegiance to his master, the Demon King of Incarceration. In fact, he is not the sole Demon King presiding over Helmuth. At this, Eugene's eyes begin to glow with a fierce intensity. Are you implying the Demon King of Ruin is preparing for war? No, Balzac replies calmly. The Demon King of Ruin finds no pleasure in violence. He is a staunch respecter of the peace. So long as one remains quiet, so shall the other. Eugene's mind is violently thrown back through time. The Demon King of Ruin, the most powerful of them all. He had only glimpsed him once in his past life, and the memory is a hazy blur, but the sensation of absolute, overwhelming dread remains as sharp as shattered glass. To this day, he is still uncertain of what he truly witnessed. Across a vast, desolate plain, a colossus was on the move. Its presence was so utterly terrifying that no one even dared to consider mounting an attack. Had Anise not been there, calming their frantic minds with her sacred prayers, they all would have surely succumbed to madness. Balzac continues his explanation, noting that just because the king remains silent, it doesn't mean his subjects share his temperament. Demons are violent by their very nature, and many have grown restless after centuries of enforced peace. It's rather ironic for me to say this, Balzac adds with a slight chuckle, but demons are not a species that thrives in tranquility. Eugene questions if he's suggesting his own followers might cause trouble. Balzac clarifies that a great many demons are eager to, and this desire isn't exclusive to his master's faction. Indeed, the servants of the Demon King of Ruin would do anything to shatter their king's long silence. On top of that, with 3 Demon King thrones now vacant, a chaotic scramble for power has begun. It's a classic power vacuum, the kind of tale where the one who *** becomes strongest. Manhwa hides *** their true ambition until the very end. He specifically names Duchess Morzabella as one of the most dangerously ambitious. Eugene scoffs, why don't they just hold a vote? Balzac lets out, demons would sooner obliterate the ballot box than accept a result they didn't orchestrate. The name echoes in Eugene's mind, the Night Witch Queen, Noirzabella, a demon of the highest rank. He seriously questions if he could even emerge victorious in a confrontation with her at his current level. He arrives at a grim and sobering conclusion. No, there is no guarantee of victory. He resolves that while he will journey to Luhar eventually, the time is not yet. He acknowledged the warning with a nod, thanking Balzac. I'll head to Nahama first, then make my way to Luhar afterward. Balzac repeated the name thoughtfully. Nahama? Be cautious in the desert, Balzac advised. Of the sandstorms? Eugene questioned, though he already knew that wasn't the real danger. Of Amelia Merwin, Balzac clarified, his tone dropping to a low, serious register. He explained that Amelia was a formidable dark mage long before she ever made a pact with his master, and while he enjoys considerable freedom, Amelia is granted even more leeway. With that, Balzac extended a black, sealed envelope, wreathed in swirling dark energy. Should you cross paths with Amelia Merwin, he instructed, give this to her. He assured Eugene that if he did, regardless of any provocation on his part, she would not lay a hand on him. Eugene accepted the peculiar envelope. What exactly is this? He demanded. Balzac simply instructed him to open it. Eugene cracked the wax seal and unfolded the dark paper, his eyes widening in disbelief at its contents. For inside the envelope Balzac had given him, there was absolutely nothing. It was just a single, blank, folded piece of cardstock. Eugene looked up, a spark of irritation flashing in his gaze as he pointed out the obvious fact, it's empty. But Balzac merely offered a cool, dismissive smile. The contents, he stated calmly, are entirely unimportant. What truly matters, he explained with a self-satisfied grin, is the simple fact that you are holding a letter penned by my own hand. The act of carrying it is the message itself. As if to punctuate his words, a flare of dark energy erupted from the envelope, sealing it shut once more with a faint, ominous glow. Balzac then told him that while he couldn't shield him from every single peril in the desert, this letter would be more than sufficient to manage a certain dark mage's infamous temper. He urged Eugene to accept it, seeing how determined he was to make the journey. Weary of these mind games, Eugene halted beneath a dim street lamp, his voice cutting through the quiet. "What is it you want from me?" Balzac raised his hands in a placating gesture, as if to prove he had no ulterior motives. He acknowledged Eugene's hatred for dark mages but pleaded with him to accept this one small gesture of goodwill. Eugene's eyes narrowed, suspicion. He racked his brain for any logical reason for this kindness, wondering if this was a classic story where the one who becomes strongest, Manhwa, hides their true intentions, before landing on the most absurd possibility he could conjure. "Are you interested in men?" For the first time, the ever-composed Tower Master was utterly speechless, completely floored by the question. "What?" Eugene proceeded to lay out his logic. It wasn't a matter of prejudice, he claimed, but for the master of the Black Tower of all people to show him such kindness was deeply suspicious. It made him feel indebted and quite frankly very concerned. Balzac threw his hands up in the air, completely flustered, admitting that the accusation had caught him entirely by surprise. He quickly forced a strained smile, desperately trying to regain his composure. "Please, don't misunderstand my intentions," he insisted, claiming he merely wished to establish a friendly, professional relationship. He added that given Eugene's immense talent and potential, everyone of consequence in Oroth was eager to get on his good side. Realizing that further argument was futile, Eugene finally relented, agreeing to accept the letter for the time being. He then tossed Balzac a half-hearted invitation to his farewell party, only to immediately rescind it, telling him explicitly not to attend. The message couldn't have been clearer. He was not welcome. Eugene then mused aloud on the peculiar nature of human emotions, how one part of him wanted to genuinely extend the invitation, while knowing that if Balzac actually appeared, his animosity would only intensify. Balzac, for his part, understood perfectly. He promised he wouldn't attend, telling Eugene not to give it a second thought. Offering a final word of thanks for the bizarre gift, Eugene turned and walked away into the darkness. Balzac simply watched him go, a silent, unreadable silhouette beneath the solitary glow of the lamplight. The following day, the atmosphere at the farewell gathering is considerably more cheerful. The Tower Masters and the Prince are gathered with Melkith, all happily indulging in the feast. The Blue Tower Master, an absolute mountain of a man with a formidable beard, approaches Eugene and asks him, rather bluntly, why he was even invited. Eugene simply points out that they are more than familiar with each other. The Blue Tower Master, he motions toward the empty chairs, questioning the absence of the other Tower Masters, but a knowing smile already graces Eugene's lips. "Surely you already know why they weren't invited?" The Blue Tower Master roars with laughter, advising the young man not to judge the others too harshly. He explains their hostility is just a mask for their envy of Eugene's staggering talent. Eugene smirks back. "I suppose my talent isn't quite enough for you then." The Blue Tower Master concedes that he would be thrilled to recruit him. However, he lacks the audacity to try and steal his dear friend Rorian's most prized pupil. From her seat, Melk interjects. She remarks that it's no surprise Eugene left Balzac off the guest list. Eugene simply states that his own master would not have been pleased to see him present. Seizing the opportunity, he asks the Blue Tower Master about Balzac's history, recalling that he was once a mage from the Blue Tower, from the very same generation. At the mention of his name, the Blue Tower Master's cheerful demeanor instantly evaporates. "Then and now," he states grimly, "that man has always been an enigma." He recounts how, over 10 years ago, Balzac was a prodigious mage, destined to be the next master of the Blue Tower. But then one day, he abruptly departed for the demon realm of Helmuth, claiming a need to expand his magical horizons. The master admits that in those days, he was not nearly as powerful as Balzac. The sole reason he holds the title of Tower Master is because Balzac simply abandoned the position. A full 10 years later, Balzac emerged from the demon realm, transformed into a fully fledged dark mage, and immediately transferred to the Black Tower. There, with the overwhelming backing of its mages, he swiftly became its new master. Balzac could have been one of the most legendary mages in history, but apparently, that wasn't enough for him. A human's magic, regardless of its greatness, is still fundamentally human. It can never hope to eclipse the power of a demon king. Shifting the topic, he confirms Eugene's next destination, the Nahama Desert. "Yes," Eugene replies, his expression The Blue Tower Master cautions him, explaining that the desert is a treacherous land. "It may not be the finest advice," he says, "but I strongly suggest that you hide your identity as a Lionheart. In every tale where a hero becomes strongest, Manhwa hides his true power, and you should do the same." "My master told me the same," Eugene responds, his expression hardening. He grasps that the risks are very real. The Blue Tower Master elaborates that the assassins of Nahama, who typically operate from the shadows, have grown increasingly audacious as of late. He doubts they would dare to openly attack the Lionheart clan, but it is always wiser to avoid attracting any unwanted attention. "I will keep that in mind," Eugene affirms, taking the warning to heart as the lively party continues around them. And with that, his chapter in the City of Mages draws to a close. Stretching before him now is the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Nahama Desert, its golden dunes rolling out to the horizon. Beneath a punishing sun, his boots sink into the pale sand, stirring clouds of fine dust. He has finally arrived, cloaked in the Prussian cape of darkness, his hands resting near the hilt of his sword. He is prepared for anything this desolate wasteland can throw his way. He stands firm against the howling wind, a solitary figure in an ocean of sand, his expression a mask of grim determination. He stood, his hood drawn up, a confident smirk playing on his lips. While a heavy, dark cape like this should be an agonizing burden in the desert, this one was special. It was imbued with potent transformation magic, a low hum resonating around him as it effortlessly regulated the searing heat of the sun against his own body temperature, maintaining a perfect state of comfort. Reaching into his cloak, he produced a magical map, a gift from his master, REBORN. The intricate device immediately locked onto his coordinates, pinpointing his exact location on its glowing surface. He was at the westernmost edge of the Nahama Desert. A grueling journey north from this point would lead him to the border of the Turoth Kingdom. His initial plan had been straightforward: find his own grave and then visit his old hometown, but a grim realization dawned on him that second part was now impossible. Over the last 300 years, the Nahama Desert had been slowly, unnaturally, expanding its reach. A relentless, endless sandstorm had been swallowing the land surrounding it, which meant Hamill's former home, once a proud part of Turoth, was now buried deep beneath these cursed sands. As a relatively small nation, Turoth had been powerless, forced to cede the territory lost to the encroaching desert, which Nahama eagerly claimed. Eugene let out a bitter scoff. Only a complete fool would mistake this for a natural phenomenon. It was clearly the sinister work of Nahama's powerful sand mages. The memory was as fresh as a bleeding wound. 300 years ago, when the Demon Kings rose and plunged the entire world into utter chaos, Nahama had used the war as a perfect cover to launch an invasion against the neighboring Kiel Empire. Their conquest only failed for one reason. The Great Vermouth himself had intervened. I despise this country in my past life too, he thought, his eyes blazing with an ancient, rekindled anger. 300 years had passed, yet his hatred hadn't faded in the slightest. He spoke to the desolate wind, his voice low and firm. In that case, let's go find my tomb first. With a determined step forward, his thoughts inevitably drifted to his long-lost comrades. Sienna, Anise, he whispered to the empty air, just wait for me. It will only be a little while longer. I swear, I will find you all. And with that vow, he broke into a dead run, sending sand flying from his boots, a fierce resolve carved into his features as he charged headlong toward his own past. But this journey was destined to be cut short. He'd been ambushed. From all around, cloaked figures erupted from the sand itself, their blades already drawn and gleaming menacingly in the harsh sun. Yet, instead of fear, a wild, predatory grin spread across Eugene's face. He beckoned them forward with a lazy, almost bored gesture. Well, come on then. Or do you need me to start first? In an instant, the assassins, becoming a blur of steel and deadly intent that converged on him from all sides. The scene abruptly flashes away. We are now in a dark, desecrated tomb, Hamill's tomb. A massive stone wall has been shattered to pieces. A sword lies broken on the dusty floor. Standing amid the ruins of his own grave, Eugene surveyed the clear signs of a ferocious battle. Sienna fought someone here, he concluded, but who? The very truth of who becomes strongest Manhwa hides in these forgotten ruins, and then, footsteps echoed from the deep darkness. A new presence stepped into the ruined chamber, and with it came a suffocating pressure, heralding the arrival of his most formidable enemy yet. The scene violently shifts again. We see Eugene on the ground, beaten and bloodied, his sword still clutched tightly in his hand. He forced his head up, pain and utter shock etched onto his face as he spat out a single, venomous name, Amelia Merwin. Looming over his broken form stood the dark sorceress herself, her face obscured by a veil, hiding everything except for her piercing purple eyes, which glowed with a cold, merciless power. The desert, after all, shows no mercy. Under a relentless, a lone figure journeyed into the very heart of a forgotten past, each step pulling him deeper into the sands of his own history. But he was not nearly as alone as he believed. Concealed behind a distant dune, a group of shadowy men watched his every move, their purpose as shrouded in mystery as their faces in the shimmering heat. Shimmering heat. Through a spyglass, a group of observers tracks their target, Eugene Lionheart, a lone traveler forging a path through the endless gold. The leader lowers the spyglass, a soft whistle of admiration escaping his lips. Now that's one incredible fellow, he mutters under his breath. His subordinate, however, simply stares back in confusion, prompting the leader to explain. This situation is truly bizarre. Typically, foreigners who dare to traverse this desert do so with caravans, armed guards, and perhaps a guide. But this young man is completely alone. He doesn't even possess a camel. His subordinate scratches his head, attempting to comprehend the scene. He speculates aloud whether this is some kind of ritual, comparing it to their own tribe's rite of passage. Given that Eugene is 19 years old, just a year away from adulthood, it seems like a plausible, if peculiar, explanation. But the leader remains unconvinced. A ritual? Perhaps. But why would a noble from the legendary Lionheart family journey all this way to this godforsaken wasteland just to perform it? Before his subordinate can pose another question, the leader silences him. Their reasons are irrelevant. All that matters is the order they were given. That boy must not be permitted to enter the Kajani desert. That was the sole command they received. He doesn't know the reason, nor is it his place to question their master. Yet the gravity of that simple directive hangs heavy in the air. The subordinate raises the spyglass once more, utterly amazed. The legends about the Lionhearts must hold true. Even on this brutal terrain, Eugene moves with incredible speed. He squints, struggling to keep him in focus. He moves as if he were born and bred in these sands, but then his eyes widen in shock. Something is terribly wrong. Panic contorts his face as he fumbles with the spyglass. He's running this way, he shouts. The leader whips his head around, his own eyes wide with disbelief. What? That should be impossible. They have been so careful, maintaining an immense distance between them to avoid detection. From that range, he would have needed his own spyglass just to spot them, and yet he is charging directly toward their position. In the next, they see exactly how. A brilliant, powerful energy flares to life around him as a pure white aura erupts from Eugene, his hair blazing like a lion's mane. The power that a man who becomes strongest Manhwa hides is now on full display. That is the legendary white flame of the Lionheart clan. With a burst of speed that kicks up a veritable sandstorm, he rockets towards them, crossing the vast distance in the blink of an eye. The leader's calm composure completely shatters. There is no doubt now. The real question is, when did he notice? He's moving far too quickly. There's no time to flee, nowhere to hide. It's already far too late. But in that split second of panic, a desperate idea takes root. A single bead of sweat traces a path down his temple. No, he thinks, a grim resolve hardening his expression. This might actually work out for the better. He turns to his men, his voice a sharp command that slices through their confusion. Everyone, draw your weapons. The new plan is simple. They will masquerade as bandits. If they can rough him up and relieve him of a few items, perhaps he'll dismiss them as common thugs and turn back, keeping him out of Kajani. His men hastily draw their curved blade, trying to look menacing as they spread out to form a semicircle. But Eugene is already dissecting them with a veteran's eye. Their stealth was amateurish, so they are not assassins. Their clothes look like a common traveler's attire, but that is clearly a disguise. Then his gaze falls upon the leader's sword. He sees it, a sharp, contained energy glowing faintly around the blade. It's sword soul, a technique far beyond the reach of any ordinary bandit. In that moment, Eugene knows this man is a master swordsman. A wide, predatory grin spreads across Eugene's face. Now, this is getting how interesting. He reflects on the past 2 years, which he spent holed up in a library with a pen, deciphering the boundless complexities of magic. While mastering magic was exhilarating and made him immensely powerful, as his fingers instinctively tighten around the hilt of his dagger, he's reminded of his true nature. He is a warrior, and a warrior is meant for action. A long-suppressed craving for battle surges within him. The sweet thrill of a genuine fight is finally upon him. The first assailant lunges, his blade swinging in a wild, desperate arc. Eugene parries the attack with his small dagger, and the resulting impact is absolutely devastating. A sharp crack resounds in the still desert air as the man's sword explodes into a dozen fragments. The sheer force of the blow leaves the man utterly dazed and vulnerable. Eugene nonchalantly sidesteps the next attacker, who promptly stumbles past and eats a faceful of sand. The remaining men charge forward, their formation laughably clumsy and predictable. He effortlessly weaves between them like a phantom, a mere blur of motion that their eyes can't possibly follow. He halts in the very center of their circle, completely unscathed as they regroup, raw uncertainty now etched on their faces. But his performance isn't over. Orbs of brilliant blue light begin to flicker into being all around him, each one thrumming with untamed magical power. The leader's eyes go wide with pure disbelief. He can actually cast magic without chanting a single word. Before that thought can even fully register, Eugene unleashes his spell. A deadly volley of magic missiles rips through the air, every single one striking its target with brutal, unerring accuracy. His assailants are flung backward as if they were ragdolls, rendered unconscious long before their bodies even hit the ground. And just like that, the fight is finished. The leader is left standing alone, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen men. Eugene saunters toward him, casually resting his sword on his shoulder. "Hey," he calls out, his voice deceptively friendly. Then, in an instant, the facade shatters. His golden eyes become cold, hard steel, seeming to pierce straight into the man's soul. "Who are you?" he demands. "And just why have you been tailing me?" The leader, drenched in sweat and completely, chokes out the pathetic lie he had prepared. "Bandits." Eugene lets out a smirk, his expression practically dripping with sarcasm. "I see," he replies, clearly not believing a word of it. It seems Nahama is one heck of a powerful nation. He proceeds to lay the mockery on as thick as possible. If the leader of a few pathetic bandits can wield sword soul, then a genuine bandit captain must be an absolute monster. And the national soldiers tasked with hunting them down, they must be on an entirely different plane of existence. He throws his arms wide, his grin stretched. "Simply amazing," he declares. "With this kind of strength readily available, Nahama could likely conquer the entire continent." Cornered, the leader desperately tries to salvage his failing story. "We're just a little special," he stammers, but Eugene immediately cuts him off. "Enough with the tall tales, be honest." In a heartbeat, Eugene's entire presence shifts. A dark, predatory grin twists his features, and and his eyes begin to glow with a menacing light. Then again, he purrs, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. I don't particularly care if you decide to stay. I'll just find out everything on my own. The leader is frozen solid, completely paralyzed by sheer terror. This person cannot be the young master of the esteemed Lionheart family. He has the face of a boy, but he speaks with the cynical tongue of a jaded, drunken mercenary. And it's a suffocating pressure he can physically feel in the air. This entire situation feels like a twisted story, the kind where the one who becomes strongest, Manhwa, hides their true power from the world. With a powerful kick against the ground, Eugene disappears in a sudden cloud of sand. The leader's eyes dart around wildly in panic. He's just vanished. Was that blink? He frantically tries to sense the high-level spell. His instincts scream a warning, and he spins around. Spinning around at the last possible second. But Eugene is already upon him, his sword descending in a merciless... The leader barely manages to jerk his own weapon into a desperate block. The raw power of the impact jolts his arms right down to the bone, and the collision confirms his deepest dread. This is the power of a sword's soul. I couldn't be sure until now, he thinks, realizing that just to parry that single strike, he was forced to unleash his own full strength. He's already being pushed into a life-or-death battle. Eugene touches down gracefully before stomping his foot hard into the earth. An enormous plume of sand explodes between them, completely obscuring the leader's vision. He clenches his jaw, his thoughts whirl. He's blinded me with sand. What's his next move? Another barrage of those magic missiles, leaving nothing to chance? He draws upon every last shred of his mana. Mana shield, he bellows, and a shimmering barrier of pure energy forms around his, preparing for the incoming assault. But it's not a volley of tiny projectiles that slams into him. It's one singular, colossal beam of condensed power that crashes against his defense. The mana shield fractures and disintegrates in a heartbeat, providing virtually no resistance to such overwhelming force. The leader is sent flying backward, his mind spinning in sheer disbelief. He shattered my mana shield. As the dust begins to settle and his vision returns, he sees Eugene's blade slicing through the air, aimed directly at his throat. His final thought is one of absolute terror. This is it. The cold steel is mere inches from his face, a fatal strike ready to land. Rahan's mind is screaming, bracing for the inevitable impact. He can practically feel the deadly energy pulsing from the blade, his eyes bulging with terror as his entire life flashes before him. Yet, the blow never connects. With a swift kick against the ground, Eugene halts his advance, stopping the sword's edge a hair's breadth from the man's neck. A broad, patronizing smirk stretches across Eugene's face. He has won, and he's making damn sure his opponent understands that fact. Raymond can only stare, sweat pouring down his brow, his mind failing to comprehend what just transpired. You deliberately chose not to strike me down, he stammers, his voice shaking with disbelief. And in a split second, that disbelief sours into pure, unrestrained fury. In his culture, this isn't an act of mercy. It's the greatest possible humiliation. How dare you insult me, he roars, his pride utterly crushed. Consumed by rage, he surges forward, swinging his sword with every last drop of strength he can muster, desperate to erase that condescending smirk from Eugene's face. But Eugene meets his frantic assault with an almost casual calm, effortlessly parrying and redirecting every single wild strike. He isn't even breaking a sweat. He simply stands his ground, a flicker of amusement in his eyes, as if this were nothing more than a child's game. With a final, almost nonchalant sweep of his blade, he sends Raman's weapon spinning through the air, disarming him in a brilliant spray of sparks. Eugene's smirk widens, his eyes shining. Now, that's more like it, he thinks. It's finally dawning on him. This is the very first time he's battled another sword's sole wielder since his reincarnation. He's genuinely enjoying himself, a thrill that even one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides deep down. He just wishes the man possessed a bit more killing intent. He's talented, for sure, but he isn't fighting to end a... Eugene's blade becomes a streak of azure light, a blur of motion as he dances around his opponent effortlessly. He glides past the man's clumsy defense and carves a precise, shallow line across his arm. Raman staggers back, clutching the fresh wound. He thinks. But the true horror lies in the nature of the wound. It's not deep. It was a message, an act of sheer contempt. The realization crashes over him like a tidal wave. This boy is treating him like a plaything. The humiliation stokes the flames of his rage, and he bellows another frustrated scream. He lunges forward once more, but Eugene effortlessly evades the telegraphed assault. He allows the man to stumble past, his blade carving a futile arc through nothing but empty air. And then with a cold, final click, Eugene sheathes his sword. Raman freezes mid-stride, his eyes bulging with utter disbelief. Why would you sheathe your sword? He demands, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and confusion. He screams, this isn't over. I haven't lost yet. Eugene turns back, his face a mask of indifference. I'm aware, he replies, a chilling calmness in his voice. It's in moments like this, the story of how one *** becomes strongest Manhwa hides *** its most terrifying chapters. Then, a predatory grin curls his lips as he leisurely cracks his knuckles. But I'm about to make you lose, he declares, his voice sinking to a menacing whisper, using only my bare hands. The words are the ultimate desecration. To be deemed unworthy of even a warrior's blade, Raymond's martial pride utterly disintegrates. With one last, desperate roar, he funnels every last shred of his power and his very sword soul into a final, suicidal charge, intent on felling the unarmed youth. Eugene remains perfectly still, not even flinching, before sidestepping at the last possible second. As Ramen hurtles past, Eugene pivots on his heel and slams a vicious open palm strike directly into the man's temple. The impact echoes with a sickening crack. Raymond stumbles away, a spray of blood erupting from his lips as his world blurs into chaos. Before he can even process the pain, Eugene seizes him by the turban and drives a devastating punch deep into his solar plexus, instantly expelling all the air and fight from his body. Leaning in close, his voice a blade of pure ice, Eugene repeats his question. "Tell me who you are." Utterly defeated and broken, the warrior finally relents. "My name is Ramen Schulhoff," he chokes out. But Eugene is far from satisfied. He violently slams Raymond to the ground, pinning him beneath him in the sand. He wrenches him up by the collar, his golden eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity. "Your name is worthless to me," he snarls. "Who sent you?" Raymond can only grit his jaw locked in a final act of defiance. Still silent, Eugene muses, before smashing his fist into the sand mere inches from Ramen's skull. The very ground trembles from the force. One of Ramon's subordinates, finally regaining his senses, crawls desperately towards them. "I beg you, please stop," he pleads. Faced with this overwhelming pressure, the subordinate finally breaks. "Our master. It's Tiri al-Madani," he confesses. From his place on the sand, Raymond tries to silence him. "Adjutant, no." But Eugene contemptuously swats his hand aside, and who is that? The adjutant spills everything in a panicked rush. "Sir Tiri al-Madani. He's the emir of Kajitan." And just like that, the puzzle piece. Kajitan, the city located just beyond the desert gateway he'd recently traversed. This meant Ramen was nothing more than an attack dog for the regional ruler. The subordinate further explains that their master had ordered them to pursue Eugene. "Just Eugene?" Eugene interrupts, a flicker of irritation in his. "Are you looking to start something with me?" The man flinches and hastily corrects his mistake. "Young Master Eugene." Eugene turns his gaze back on them. "And why?" he presses. The adjutant raises his hands in surrender, swearing they weren't privy to the specific details. Their only instruction was to prevent him from setting foot in the Kajani desert. Glancing at his still subdued captain, the man continues to plead. "Please, I'm begging you, release our captain now." With that, Eugene lets go of Ramen and rises, a contemplative expression settling on his face. The Kajani desert. The vast expanse that lay just before him, and deep within its heart was the former site of Hamill's homeland. His mind began racing, connecting the dots. Knows for certain. The Kajani desert is a recent formation, and it is the origin point of the massive sandstorms that have been devouring the territories of the neighboring kingdom. So, could this possibly be the headquarters of the infamous dark mage, Amelia Merwin? She is the most significant threat that he was warned about. A formidable outsider concealed within a perilous, newly created desert, it would be the perfect place for a lair to keep the Lionhearts at bay, but he quickly dismisses the idea. Bizak had mentioned her dungeon was deep within the Asher Desert, a great distance from this location, and nowhere near the last known whereabouts of his old comrade, Anise. It just didn't make sense for him to be a target, at least, not yet. Crossing his arms, Eugene sinks into deep contemplation. If Amelia Merwin wasn't the culprit, then someone else had a powerful motive to bar his entry into Kajani. With his mind made up, he turns to the adjutant and the remaining men. "All of you, return," he commands, his voice leaving no room for argument. Then his finger singles out the battered Ramen. "But you're coming with me." Eugene proceeds to lay out his non-negotiable terms. He was entering Kajani, one way or another, and Ramen would be his personal guide, responsible for smoothing over any trouble they might encounter along the way. He spells it out plainly for the captain. Since Ramen served the emir of Kajitan, he should have no problem resolving any local disputes simply by invoking his master's name. Ramen stands there, utterly speechless, as the grim reality of his predicament crashes down on him. He was well and truly cornered. Then, Eugene delivers the final blow. "Of course, if that plan doesn't suit you," he says with a cunning grin, "I could simply return to the Lionheart estate and inform them that the emir of Kajitan dispatched his men, disguised as common bandits, to seize a priceless Lionheart family treasure. How does that sound to you?" Pure panic washes over Ramen's face. He stammers out, but the threat lingers ominously in the desert air. It would be his word against that of a direct Lionheart descendant. Eugene's grin only widens. "And the funny thing is, I just so happen to have something incredibly valuable on my person right now," he declares, his hand moving to his hip as he draws his blade. "Winid, do you have any idea what this is?" he asks, the steel glinting. "This is the Windstorm sword, the very blade wielded by the great hero, Vermouth Lionheart himself." He lets the weight of those words sink in. Everyone understood the immeasurable value of such a relic. It was the perfect, irrefutable lie. It's the kind of epic tale where a hero becomes strongest. Manhwa hides his true power, so most would readily believe the emir of Kajitan would risk everything to possess Vermouth's legendary blade. Ramen was completely and utterly trapped, his face contorted into a mask of pure horror as his mind raced. If this boy spread that rumor, it wouldn't just be his own head on the line. His men would face execution. Even his master, the emir himself, might not withstand the full force of the Lionheart family's wrath. Completely broken, he finally bows his head. Very well, I will do as you command, young Master Eugene. A triumphant and utterly sinister grin stretches across Eugene's face. He had gotten exactly what he wanted. With his newly acquired guide in tow, Eugene ventures deeper into the desert sands. Trailing behind him, Raman follows with the heavy, dragging footsteps of a man whose loyalty and pride have been utterly shattered. His mind was a vortex of shame. He had betrayed his master. The order was to prevent the Lionheart boy from entering Kajani, not to personally escort him in like some glorified bodyguard. He knew all too well what happens to subordinates who fail their missions so spectacularly. As his mind spiraled into darkness, Eugene's voice cut sharply through his despair. Hey, Raman. Eugene glances over his shoulder, getting straight to the point. What's your rank exactly? Raman instinctively straightens his posture, a faint flicker of pride igniting in his voice. He declares that he is the captain of Legion 2 of the Red Desert Warriors, the elite personal guard of the Emir of Kajatan. Eugene gives a slight nod. A high-ranking officer, just as he'd suspected. That certainly explained the man's considerable skill with a blade. With that detail confirmed, he moves on to the real question. Are there desert mages in the Kajani Desert? Raman looks at him with a completely blank expression. Sorry. The facade of civility instantly evaporates. A dark, menacing grin spreads across Eugene's face as he audibly cracks his nut. Don't play dumb with me, he snarls. Or are you eager for another round? Panicked, Raman frantically denies it. Raman flatly denies the possibility, insisting that the desert mages serve only the royal family. What reason could they possibly have for being this far out, so distant from the capital's heart? Eugene simply turns and continues his trek, his profound silence, speaking volumes more than any spoken threat ever could. At last, he glances back, his expression a perfect mask of sheer irritation. Are you an idiot? The blunt question strikes Raman like a physical blow, catching him completely off guard. My apologies, Eugene says, before laying out the stark reality for him. This territory, the Kajani Desert, didn't even exist a few decades back. It was once a lush forest, a part of the kingdom of Terra, until a sudden, cataclysmic sandstorm annihilated it, turning everything to dust. The Sultan of Nahama, he continues, declared it a divine act, and using that convenient pretext, he moved his warriors into the area for training, effectively seizing the land for his own. Eugene steps directly into Raman's personal space, poking a finger firmly into his chest. The desert continues to grow, he explains. Nahama wouldn't dare pull this stunt against a major power, but Torth is weak. This is how an empire becomes strongest. Manhwa hides its aggression as simple training exercises. But Raymond's loyalty remains absolute. Impossible, he insists. Even if you are correct, my master would never involve himself in such a wicked plot. A faint smirk plays on Eugene's lips as he pieces it all together. You're far more innocent than you look, he says, before striking at the very heart of the matter. You're from this land, aren't you? He proceeds to lay out the man's entire life story with unnerving accuracy. He deduces that Raman must have survived that devastating sandstorm by a stroke of pure luck, only to be taken in and raised by the benevolent Emir. That explains why he so vehemently refuses to believe his master could be complicit. Raymond's stunned silence is all the confirmation Eugene requires. Eugene lets out a sigh, waving a hand dismissively. Look, just understand this, he states plainly. I have zero interest in getting entangled in your nation's political theater. He goes on to explain that he can surmise why Raymond's master attempted to intercept him. It would create a colossal headache for all involved if a member of the Lionheart clan began investigating the exact location where desert mages were, illegally expanding their territory. The cold, hard logic is simply undeniable. Utterly defeated, Raman finally nods in acceptance. Oh, I see it now. Now that he comprehends the true gravity of the situation, Raman makes a solemn vow. If they should encounter the desert mages, he will be the one to step forward and protect Eugene. He is confident that his master's name carries enough influence that even mages in the Sultan's direct employ would be forced to show some deference. Eugene merely shrugs, his expression one of complete skepticism. I certainly hope so. With the immediate tension diffused, for the time being, Raman finally poses the question of why he is so resolute about venturing into the Kajani Desert. He stresses that there is truly nothing of value there. As they continue their journey, Eugene offers a simple, two-word response. To find a grave. A grave, Raman echoes, his confusion evident. I'm visiting an ancestor. Why didn't you just say that from the start? Eugene scoffs at the question. And what precisely would you have done? Raman explains his reasoning. He knows of a graveyard within Kajani to which he could have guided him directly, but Eugene simply shakes his head. It's not in a graveyard. The grave I seek is located somewhere else entirely. A solitary, lonely resting place, lost to the ravages of time and sand. And just then, both men halt in their tracks. Shimmering in the oppressive heat before them is a truly impossible vision, a beautiful oasis, complete with crystal-clear blue water and verdant palm trees. Raman stares, his mind reeling in disbelief. An oasis? There isn't supposed to be an oasis anywhere in Kajani, but Eugene immediately sees it for what it truly is. It's fake, he states flatly. Raman, still bewildered, asks, You mean, it's a mirage? Eugene shakes his head once more. A mirage is merely a reflection of a real oasis that exists somewhere else. This, he clarifies, is illusion magic. Magic? Impossible, Raman argues. Would anyone bother to create a fake oasis? At this, Eugene's patience finally snaps. Hey, Raman, do me a favor and keep your denials to yourself. Listening to you is starting to give me a headache. You're starting to get on my nerves. He then breaks down the elementary logic of a desert trap. An oasis represents survival. The moment a desperate soul spots one, they'll charge blindly towards it. Understanding finally washes over Raymond's face. Are you saying that there are people lying in wait to ambush us? We're about to find out. Eugene replies coolly, and without a hint of hesitation, he begins striding directly toward the shimmering illusion. As he draws near, the glinting tip of a blade soundlessly pierces the surface of the sand, aimed squarely at his feet. Raymond spots it and shrieks in terror. Young master, look out, it's dangerous. But Eugene is already airborne. Having effortlessly vaulted over the concealed trap, he casts a condescending glance back over his shoulder. Did you really think if you could spot that I wouldn't? His eyes flare with power as he invokes a spirit from the very air, chanting, Intermediate Wind Spirit. Gale! A colossal tornado of wind and sand erupts from his position, scouring the entire vicinity with a devastating concussive force. Raman is violently thrown from his feet, crying out as the brutal spell sends him tumbling through the air. Eugene, however, lands with perfect calm, observing as the sandstorm of his own making scours the dunes bare. The powerful gale exposes a cloaked figure, violently ripped from their hiding place beneath the sand. The ambusher staggers to their feet, their robes tattered and stained with blood. From under their face coverings, their eyes blaze with a crimson, white-hot fury. Eugene has handled the first assailant, but as the tempest subsides, the very ground around them begins to shift and churn. One after another, more figures emerge from the sand, revealing an entire squad of hidden assassins rising from their sandy grave. They swiftly form a circle, entrapping Eugene and Raman at its heart. Raman desperately scrambles to his feet and hurries forward in a futile attempt to de-escalate. Lay down your weapons, he bellows, courageously positioning himself between Eugene and the encroaching threat. He attempts to leverage his authority, shouting his name and rank while declaring that Eugene is an honored guest of Kajitan Emir. He warns them that to attack his charge is to declare war upon the Emir himself. However, they don't so much as flinch. One of the ambushers simply takes a step forward, their blade held at the ready as they tighten the circle, utterly ignoring his pleas, his rank, his master's name. It all means nothing out here. Raman can only stare, his voice trembling with utter disbelief. What? Are you deaf? Did you not hear me? Growing desperate, he adds that Eugene is a scion of the Lionheart family from the mighty Kiel Empire, hoping that prestigious name will finally deter them. Eugene simply pats him on the shoulder with a wry smile. That's pointless, he remarks. You're only making their job easier. Raymond looks back at him, utterly bewildered. I'm sorry? Eugene proceeds to lay out the grim reality with a sinister grin. Now that they've made a move on a Lionheart, they can't possibly let him go. Taking his life would bring far too much trouble, so their next logical step is to capture him alive. He sizes up the enemies encircling them. But to do that, he says, his voice brimming with the kind of confidence a hero who becomes strongest Manhwa hides, they'll have to get through me first. The sheer number of assailants is staggering. Raman grips his dagger, his knuckles turning white. He knows he must fight, that he has to aid the young master. Eugene, on the other hand, appears absolutely ecstatic about these impossible odds. He casually beckons to them with his fingers. Come and get me, he taunts, a wide, predatory grin spreading across his face. Or shall I make the first move? The ambushers provide his answer, launching themselves through the air in perfect unison. A deadly wave of flashing steel and glowing red eyes descends upon their prey. And in the crucible of battle, a memory surfaces. A voice from 300 years in the past, belonging to Anise, the saintess of his party, Anise, regarded him with gentle concern. Hamill, she inquired softly, why must you always carry such an abundance of weapons that you never even wield? He recalled his own obstinate response, turning his back with a defiant scowl. They'll prove their worth one day. The sharp-tongued archmage interjected from the sidelines, advising Anise to simply let him be. Yet, Anise persisted, complaining that Hamill's compulsive hoarding was becoming a genuine issue. All those surplus, untouched weapons were his. So why, she demanded, should Poor be the one burdened with carrying them all? And there he was, the valiant, groaning and drenched in sweat as he struggled with a colossal cart piled high with a ridiculous arsenal of swords, axes, and spears. Hamill simply dismissed it with a shrug, stating that he had bested fair and square in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Anise shot back that you couldn't wager on who had to haul your own personal clutter. Hamill retorted, telling her to quit painting him as the villain. It's not just my gear. There's a mountain of her precious holy water in there, and Moron's gigantic axe is by far the heaviest item on that cart. Anise's warm expression instantly turned to ice. She thought to herself that if the holy water was solely for her own use, she would carry it herself. But the ones who were constantly guzzling it down were those two, Sienna and Hamill. The dispute then pivoted, with Hamill rounding on Sienna. He shouted that he had warned her to be more conservative with the holy water and that the wagon wouldn't even be necessary, she would just utilize her storage magic. Sienna screamed right back, reminding him that he was the one who had insisted they transport everything physically so they could access their equipment at a moment's notice. In desperation, Hamill appealed to the one person who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange. Vermouth, what's your take on this? He pleaded. Why don't you take a turn pulling the wagon? Vermouth merely glanced over his shoulder, his voice perfectly calm and utterly detached. None of my weapons are on there. Hamill muttered sarcastically about how incredibly convenient those pocket dimensions must be. Sienna smugly concurred, telling him that was precisely why she'd said he should just learn magic from her. She even taunted him with an offer to teach him, if only he would get on his knees and beg. The memory dissolved, and Eugene found himself back, a wry thought flickering through his mind. If he'd only possessed this, the cloak of darkness with its bottomless storage capacity back in those days, perhaps his comrades wouldn't have given him such an endless stream of grief. With that final thought, he launched himself into the battle. A wild, ferocious grin stretched across his features. He resolved to handle this the old-fashioned way, the Hamill way. He flung his arms wide and his cloak surged with a violent energy as dozens of assorted weapons burst forth from its shadowy abyss. He snatched a spear from midair, deflecting an incoming sword with a clash that sent a shower of sparks into the air. He then vaulted himself into the sky, spear poised high, targeting an assassin on the ground below. He brought the weapon down in a single, devastating plunge, smashing the man deep into the desert sand. Before the dust cloud had a chance to settle, he was already seizing a massive scythe and swinging it in a wide, lethal arc. The blade sheared cleanly through another assailant, a crimson geyser erupting against the desert sun. He followed this with a bone-crushing punch, shattering another assassin's defense and undoubtedly their bones right along with it. The next foe lunged at him from the side, their blade a silver flash, but Eugene was already a phantom, a blur of motion as he parried the attack with a glowing azure dagger. He ducked beneath a clumsy swing, his own blade flashing as it found its home in the man's side. He moved through them like a specter of death as two more assassins converged from behind. This is the true power that a hero who becomes strongest Manhwa hides, and they never stood a chance. He'd already predicted their move. With a swift pivot, his blade flares with power, dispatching them both in a single, fluid strike before they could even process what happened. These were clearly elite assassins, their movements perfectly synchronized, but they had the misfortune of facing a true monster in human form. Eugene parried and countered every single assault, his speed a blur that defied the naked eye. He sent a dagger flying, with deadly accuracy, finding its mark with lethal precision. He then drew his legendary sword, its hilt pulsing with mana as he braced for the next onslaught. In a seamless motion, he deflected an incoming blade while simultaneously smashing his pommel into another attacker's face. He stood firm, a calm epicenter in a raging storm of steel and death. Another assassin crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering from a lifeless grasp. Eugene ducked beneath a desperate lunge and ran his blade clean through his opponent's torso. With a flick of his foot, he launched a fallen axe into the air, snatching it mid-rotation. He then unleashed it, and it slammed into another assassin with brutal, bone-shattering force. The axe blade bit deep into the man's skull, felling him instantly upon the sand. Seizing the momentary chaos, another attacker tried their luck, manifesting sharp, venomous spikes from their very arm. But Eugene was always one step ahead. He slid across the desert floor, his sword aglow with azure energy, and swept the legs out from under his remaining foes, felling them all in a single, graceful arc. Then, in one final, fluid spin, his blade drew a circle of lethal light, silencing the last of them forever. Raymond watched from a distance, completely paralyzed by what he'd just witnessed. All he could think was, he's utterly dominating them. I can't even spot a single opening to even attempt. As the dust settled, the various weapons Eugene had wielded floated eerily in the air around him, still humming with a faint azure glow. With a simple, dismissive gesture, he recalled them, and one by one they dematerialized, vanishing into the shadows of his cloak. He stood alone, the victor in a circle of fallen foes, the desert sand stained dark with their lifeblood. Raymond was absolutely dumbfounded. Eugene had barely even drawn upon the full power of his legendary sword, wielded, and used magic as mere backup. Instead, he unleashed a primal fury, a master of every weapon imaginable. This raw power is what a hero who becomes strongest Manhwa hides, fighting like a beast unleashed. Raymond finally found his voice and cautiously approached, his tone a mixture of awe and horror. Did you have to eliminate every single one of them? Eugene's response was chillingly practical. An assassin values their mission far more than their own life. They are the sort of people who wouldn't utter a sound even if you severed their limbs. He glanced down at one of the fallen. I simply lack the skills or the time to waste trying to interrogate professionals of this caliber. Raymond took an involuntary step back. You're still planning to continue? He asked, his voice wavering. Eugene explained that the only reason he brought him along was for his master's authority. But these assassins clearly didn't care about the Emir's seal. There's no longer any reason for you to accompany me. But I can't just turn back now, Raymond stammered. Eugene raised a single eyebrow. And why is that? Do you wish to see what happens next with your own eyes? Raymond fell silent, his expression turning grim. He knew he couldn't return empty-handed, and now, a burning curiosity to witness the conclusion of this affair had taken root within him. Eugene sighed. You're not particularly useful, he muttered. I swear I won't be a burden. Do as you please, Eugene replied with a dismissive wave. Just don't come crying to me when you need saving. He gave Raymond a light shove, making him stumble. But just as they were about to depart, Eugene suddenly, he freezes, his gaze riveted to the ground below. A sinister, crimson light begins to pulse from the fallen assassins. Dark, bubbling smoke rides upwards from their corpses, coiling into the air like a foul, unholy miasma. Eugene's eyes fly open, a horrified realization dawning on him as his voice cuts through the silence, sharp with alarm. The bodies, they were sacrifices. This is a summoning ritual. At that moment, the desert floor begins to churn violently. The sand swirls around them as an immense surge of mana erupts from deep within the earth. Every one of his senses is screaming danger. Something truly terrible is on its way. The desert itself seems to howl in agony as a swirling vortex of sand rips across the landscape. This is no mere sandstorm. It's a cage. Its magical currents are dragging everything toward its epicenter. Raman scrambles to his feet, sheer terror etched on his face. He screams back at Eugene, his voice cracking. "Young master, you have to run." But it's already far too late. The gale intensifies, colossal tornado that completely blots out the sun, a roaring wall of sand and raw fury. Raymond braces himself, struggling against the punishing winds, his mind racing to comprehend. A storm of this magnitude doesn't just materialize from nothing. This is unnatural. And then, it all clicks into place. The sacrificed assassins, the illusion, the magic, he whispers, the horrifying truth settling into his soul. Could the storm that swallowed his home all those years ago also have been the work of sand mages? Just as Eugene warned, it's like a tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true power, a memory flashing before his eyes of his own self. A small boy staring in pure, helpless terror. He is reliving the very nightmare that annihilated his entire village. The same swirling chaos, the same suffocating fear. A desperate, primal roar tears from his throat as he draws his blade, absolutely refusing to become a victim once more. He slashes wildly at the maelstrom, his sword, soul flaring to life, but his blade only cleaves through empty air and wind. This tempest is a force of magic far beyond anything he can possibly combat. He grits his teeth in utter frustration. It's hopeless. Slicing through a storm of this colossal scale is simply impossible for him. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet softens, transforming into treacherous quicksand. With a sharp grunt of pain, he feels an inexorable pull from below, sinking deeper with every passing second. Yet, Eugene remains completely untouched, floating calmly within the eye of the storm. His own magical aura effortlessly pushes back against the raging winds. Even so, he knows that his wind spirit alone cannot overpower a tempest of this magnitude. Simply holding his ground is the absolute most he can manage. He briefly considers teleporting to safety, but something gives him pause. A distinct feeling, a powerful presence emanating from below. His eye downward. Something immense is stirring, moving up through the sand. He hears Raman scream his name in terror. The quicksand has now become a swirling pit, and Raman is being dragged under, rendered completely helpless. Eugene clicks his tongue, a flicker of annoyance on his face. He truly didn't want to get involved in this mess, but he can't just stand by and watch the man perish. In a brilliant flash, he abandons his safe position and lunges forward, his hand outstretched. He shoves Raymond with every ounce of his strength, sending the older man flying clear of the vortex's deadly pull. "Young master," Raman cries out, tumbling through the air towards safety. Eugene just shouts back, his voice strained against the howling wind. The roar of the storm nearly drowns him out. "Get out of here, you fool." And in that instant, it happens. A colossal maw of teeth and flesh erupts from the directly beneath his feet, a monster of truly unimaginable size. In that split second, a single, chilling thought flashes through his mind. A single, terrifying thought flashed through Eugene's mind. Sandworm. Its colossal jaws snapped shut with the force of a seismic event. "Young master!" Rahan's horrified scream tore through but his cry was instantly consumed by the howling gale. He slammed onto the sand, his gaze locked on the empty space where Eugene had just been. He was alive, he had been but Rahan gripped his dagger, his knuckles turning bone-white with a potent mix of fury and the crushing weight of a debt he never wanted. He gritted, his teeth, his face transforming into a mask of pure, unyielding determination. "I will repay this debt," he vowed to the raging storm itself. As a true warrior, with a final, defiant war cry, he charged headfirst back into the swirling vortex of sand, utterly resolved to save the very man who had just rescued him. Meanwhile, Eugene was plummeting through the dark, fleshy gullet of the sandworm. He knew exactly what these monstrous things were. They completely disintegrate anything they consumed for sustenance. There were no exits. Once you were inside, you were simply digested. And yet, a confident smirk played on Eugene's lips, his eyes glowing with latent power. "Fine," he thought, "then I'll just have to carve my own way out." He ignited his mana, causing the brilliant white light of the Lionheart flames to flare into existence. And then, he began to add his own unique magic into the concoction. The white flames churned and twisted, merging with a vortex of blue energy as he prepared to unleash his ultimate technique, the circle flame method. The creature's innards started to convulse violently as Eugene readied himself to tear it apart from the inside. He surged onward, his sword now cloaked in a corrosive green flame, effortlessly slicing through thick layers of muscle and flesh. He carved a destructive path forward, burning and melting everything in his wake. But then, he came to an abrupt halt. He'd struck something solid. With a soft click, his boots made contact with hard-packed earth and stone, not the pliable flesh he had anticipated. He took a moment to survey his surroundings. The walls were a bizarre fusion of living tissue and a magically reinforced tunnel, still dripping with caustic residue from his attack. He began to put the pieces together. The summoning magic hadn't created the creature. It had merely conjured the sandstorm to lure the beast to this very spot. The sandworm hadn't been summoned at all. It was a native to this region. His eyes narrowed in deep thought. Could this be the sandworm's nest? A long-forgotten memory began to surface. He recalled that mages who wished to conduct their research in secrecy would often establish hidden bases known as dungeons, and the desert mages of old, the very ones who settled this land, were famously referred to as dungeon makers. He could almost hear Sienna's voice explaining it to him all those centuries ago. Sandworms burrow deep into the desert, creating natural labyrinths, she had told him. You just have to leave one of them alone, for about 10 days, and it will carve out an entire complex dungeon all on its own. After that, you simply get rid of the sandworm, and use magic to reinforce the tunnels. He remembered a younger, more obnoxious Hamill asking her if she was planning on building a desert dungeon for herself. Sienna had snapped back at him. Are you out of your mind? Why would I ever hide myself away in a desert dungeon? As the memory faded, Eugene produced a small, glowing blue device. It was a locator, and on its screen, he could see a clear path marked through the winding tunnels. This dungeon. It might just be the path that leads him back to his old homeland. Determined grin spread across his face. Let's go. Meanwhile, back on the surface, a quiet voice called out the dying storm. Rahan Shulhoff. Rahan looked up, startled and disoriented. He was completely surrounded by a group of men in veiled desert robes who seemed to have materialized from thin air. Their presence was cold and menacing. He then realized he was trapped atop sand. They had to be sand mages. What is this? The leader scoffed, his voice dripping with mockery. It was quite amusing, watching you charge at the sandworm. You're like a protagonist in a tale where the weakling becomes strongest. Manhwa hides his true potential, except you have no potential to hide. Did you truly believe you could kill it with your pathetic level of skill? He waved a placid, dismissive wave of his hand. Regardless, we brought you to this place because we have a few questions for you. Rayan glares back at them, his heart pounding in his chest. Questions? The mage leans in closer, his eyes narrowing to slits behind his veil. Eugene Lionheart, the name, hangs in the air, as cold and sharp as a blade of ice. Why is a spoiled young master of the esteemed Lionheart family all the way out here in the Kajani Desert, deep underground, in a cavern carved purely from magic? The sand mage's question reverberated, laced with venomous suspicion. Tell me, why is a pampered young master from the esteemed Lionheart family found here, of all places? The leader's voice was sharp as he pointed an accusatory finger directly at the captive Rahan. And you, a warrior sworn to Kajitan's emir, why are you guiding a scion of the Lionhearts? Rahan's lips remained sealed, his expression a grim mask of defiance. He was ensnared, fully aware that any word he uttered would be twisted and used against him. The mage leaned closer, his voice a sibilant, menacing whisper. Is the emir of Kajitan, Tiri al-Madani, plotting to betray our entire nation? He reminded Rahan pointedly that the emir's sacred duty was to keep all outsiders from this very place. To see him doing the precise opposite only fanned the flames of their paranoia. Another mage interjected coldly. What business could you have so deep under— The question hung in the air like a threat, a stark reminder that Rahan had trespassed into their secret domain. Finally, Rahan snapped. He fired back with accusations of his own. The illusory oasis? The unnatural sandstorm. I know it was all your— The leader merely scoffed, making a dismissive, crushing gesture with his hand. You clearly failed to grasp the gravity of the situation you're in. An unseen wave of pure force slammed into Rahan, violently expelling the air from his lungs. He let out a pained groan as he was brutally forced to his knees by their overwhelming power. We are the ones asking the questions here, the mage stated calmly, idly wondering if Rahan's stubborn silence was merely a misguided attempt to protect his master's honor. He informed Rahan his silence was utterly pointless. You're going to die here regardless. So, instead of a drawn-out, painful end, I can offer a swift one in exchange for answers. He then laid out their working theory. Eugene Lionheart moved with a clear destination from the very moment he arrived. The only logical conclusion is that the emir of Kajitan is leveraging a Lionheart to orchestrate a betrayal. That single word betrayal struck Rahan like a physical blow, but not in the way his captors intended. In that chilling instant, the horrifying truth crashed down upon him. His own master, Sir Tyree, had to be part of this despicable conspiracy from the very beginning. His shock curdled into a righteous, burning fury. You resort to such petty tricks to encroach upon another nation's sovereign land. He roared. He demanded to know why mages, sworn to protect the royal family, were operating out here, accusing them of manufacturing the very sandstorms that were stealing land from their neighbors. The leader calmly informed him he was gravely mistaken. A storm of sufficient magnitude to cause widespread desertification would require the combined power of hundreds of sand mages. Our small contingent is nowhere near powerful enough for such a feat. Rahan was stunned into silence. If that wasn't their purpose, then what was? Then, why are you here? Our purpose is a truth so profound. It is the kind of secret a hero who becomes strongest Manhwa hides to protect his very existence. We are not obligated to answer you, the mage replied, punishing Rahan's defiance with another invisible blast of magic. The leader leaned in once more, his eyes boring into Rahan's soul as he repeated the one question that truly mattered to them. Why is Eugene Lionheart in the Kajani Desert? Believing it with all his heart, Rahan screamed, his voice a torrent of grief and rage. What does it even matter? The young master is already dead. You monsters, killed him. The mages exchanged glances, and one of them shrugged nonchalantly. Wouldn't it have been better to just dispose of him? His life was worthless, anyway, but before he could finish, another mage cut him off sharply. Wait, a subordinate rushed over, whispering urgently into his ear. A subordinate whispers urgently into the leader's ear. The leader asks, "What is it?" The subordinate reports that while Eugene was indeed swallowed by the sand, the situation has now drastically changed. The news is staggering. A hole has been torn through the sandworm, meaning the boy must have broken out before he could be fully digested. The leader is momentarily concerned, but his confidence returns as he orders the assassins stationed in the tunnels to find him, certain he will be recaptured soon enough. But Rayhan overheard every single word, and a tiny flicker of hope reignites within his eyes. Young Master Eugene is alive. The mages begin to debate their next move, wanting to avoid a war with the Lionhearts. One suggests completely erasing Eugene's memories and abandoning him outside the desert. The leader, however, considers a far more cunning possibility. What if they were to rescue and protect Eugene? They might even be able to leverage it for a reward. He chuckles to himself. It's a good thing the boy isn't here, because the one who *** becomes strongest Manhwa hides *** their presence until the perfect moment to strike. His thought is cut short by a sudden flicker of movement in the tunnel directly behind him. From the deep shadows of the corridor, a lone figure emerges. It is Eugene, and in the dim light of the cavern, his golden eyes are glowing with a cold, unforgiving fury. The mages are completely frozen in shock. How could he be here? One of them whispers in a panic, "What happened to the assassins?" The leader senses a faint, chilling trace of killing intent wafting from the tunnel behind Eugene. He perceives a blur of motion in the darkness, the faint sound of muffled struggles, and then an absolute, deathly silence. The leader's eyes fly wide in disbelief. Impossible. Down the corridor lies a silent pile of his fallen assassins, cut down so swiftly they couldn't even raise an alarm. He can't comprehend it. Those assassins knew this maze perfect. Their stealth abilities should have rendered them completely undetectable to even the most elite warrior. The assassins here are not that impressive, Eugene says, his voice flat and utterly unimpressed. He explains that their stealth was just a physical skill. When it came to the art of controlling their mana, they were complete amateurs. A memory from 300 years ago flashes in his mind. He recalls the truly elite assassins of Nahama. Their stealth was so profound it was on par with that of demons. Their will so relentless, they barely seemed human. Compared to those monsters, these men were nothing. If this place were genuinely important, he thinks, they should have much more competent guards. This raises a chilling question. Is the Sultan just allowing this rogue group to operate freely out in his lands? "Young master," Rehan cries out, a wave of pure, overwhelming relief washing over him. Eugene just looks annoyed. "Rahan, I created an opening for you to run. Why are you still here?" He ignores him for now and casually strolls towards the sand mages. "Hey, you guys," he says casually. "I have a few questions for you." One of the mages slams his foot down, activating a hidden trap. The ground erupts into a cage of razor-sharp stone spikes, shooting up to impale him. But Eugene is ready for it. He calmly produces a small, glowing mana stone and simply drops it to the floor. With a soft boom, he pulls his hood low, his face obscured by shadow. A wave of purple energy explodes outwards, not to counter the spell, but to completely annihilate the very mana that fuels it. The mages can only stare in absolute, mind-numbing shock as their powerful trap crumbles into nothing. The stone spikes disintegrate into fine dust, leaving the cavern floor perfectly flat, as if the trap never existed. Eugene stands there completely unscathed, already holding another mana stone in his hand. The mages struggle to process what they just saw. That wasn't dispel magic, which merely disrupts a spell's formation. The leader's face drains of color as a terrifying realization dawns on him. Eugene's last move didn't just counter the magic, it annihilated the very mana itself, a feat utterly unheard of. Such a technique was a myth, even in the hallowed halls of Arath. He wonders if this is how a hero becomes strongest. Manhwa hides the true terror of such forbidden arts, he thinks. A grim decision solidifies in his mind. Capturing this boy is impossible. It's a shame, but their mission has changed. He must be eliminated at all costs. A cold, menacing smile curls on Eugene's lips as he clenches his fist. "You were the ones who started this," he states, a sphere of crackling azure energy materializing. It forms in his palm, his eyes gleaming with a predatory intensity. "So, I trust you'll have no objections when I return the favor, permanently, right?" A palpable tension grips the mages as they brace for his imminent assault. He's on the move, one shouts, and they scramble into a defensive formation, their hands weaving through intricate seals to invoke their own cataclysmic spell. A roaring torrent of earth and sand erupts, a colossal wave of destructive force hurtling directly towards Eugene. Yet, he remains perfectly still, a confident smirk playing on his face, poised for the real battle to commence. The time for games is over. Trapped deep beneath the earth and encircled by foes, Eugene decides it's time to stop holding back. He's about to show them the face of a true monster. He raises a small, luminous crystal, channeling a torrent of his mana directly into it. His expression turns to ice, his gaze as sharp as a blade. This isn't a mere spell, it's an outright declaration of war. With a final surge, he unleashes the crystal's stored power, loosing a brilliant beam of pure energy that rips through the cavern's darkness. The sand mage has scarcely a moment to react. His eyes widen in utter disbelief, unable to process the speed and power. He never even had a chance. The incandescent blast strikes him head-on, launching him. violently backward, completely overwhelmed by the sudden, crushing force. But that was merely an appetizer. Eugene then unleashes his own immense reserves of power. A shockwave of pure energy erupts from his body, his cloak whipping about him like a storm. The very ground beneath him cracks and splinters. The air itself seems to fracture as the force expands outward in a blinding, incandescent flash. The surviving mages and assassins are thrown about like leaves in a hurricane, utterly incapable of withstanding his raw, untamed power. The mages struggle to their feet. They scramble upright, their hands a desperate blur of motion as they attempt to weave a counterspell. Eugene observes them, his expression one of complete and utter disdain. He sees straight through their clumsy stratagem, recognizing their pathetic attempt to conjure mere illusions. It's a simple distraction. His gaze is already locked onto the true threat materializing directly above him. A deadly volley of sharp, shadowy projectiles, each one crafted for a killing blow. Without a single flicker of panic, he draws his sword, its blade humming with a familiar violet energy. In a fluid, gravity-defying motion, he effortlessly deflects every last projectile, the sharp ring of steel on magic echoing throughout the cavern as he dismantles their ambush with nonchalant ease. The lead mage can only gape in horror, his mind struggling to comprehend. What just happened? How could any human possibly counter that attack so flawlessly? A tremor of pure, primal fear courses through him. He finally understands that he is not fighting a mere man. He's facing something else entirely. The very air seems to stain blood-red as Eugene moves. In a blinding flash, he is upon them, a blur of motion that spells certain doom. He lands without a sound, leaving only a wake of chaos and broken bodies. The fight, if one could even call it that, is finished. With his arms crossed and an expression of cold indifference, he stands over the last conscious mage, who is frozen to the ground in sheer terror. Eugene gets straight to the point, his voice low and demanding. What was your purpose here? The mage trembles, completely by the overwhelming display of power, managing only a few terrified stutters. Eugene scoffs, telling the man he's far too weak to be. He was supposedly a member of the Sultan's royal guard, so Eugene cut straight to the chase, demanding to know if they were operating without the Sultan's authority. The mage sputtered, attempting a feeble denial, but Eugene had zero tolerance for such games. A swift, brutal thrust of a dagger into the man's thigh silenced him. That single motion effectively ended the debate. He glared down at the whimpering mage, his face an unyielding mask of stone, making it clear he wouldn't waste another second on a lengthy interrogation. The choice laid before him was brutally simple: talk or perish. Unsurprisingly, the mage finally cracked under the pressure. He confessed that their actions here were completely independent of the Sultan's command. Eugene's eyes narrowed dangerously. Then whose orders are you following? The Amir of Kajitan, Eugene pressed, but the mage frantically shook his head. No, he gasped, clarifying that while the Amir was cooperating, he wasn't the one pulling the strings. He was merely a collaborator, not the mastermind. Yet, before another word could escape his lips, the mage made a desperate move, snatching the dagger still embedded in his leg, and plunged it into his own chest. As his life force drained away, he shrieked the name of their true master, a name that would irrevocably alter everything. Amelia Merwin. The name struck Eugene with the force of a physical blow. Amelia Merwin, the very same dark mage who had defiled his grave 2 centuries ago. 200 years in the past, a chilling horror dawned on him. This entire labyrinth was her personal dungeon, his face contorted with pure, unadulterated rage. Don't mess with me, he snarled, his voice a low growl. He knew for a fact her true sanctum was located deep within the Ashur Desert. The dying mage coughed out a reply. He gasped that for the last 6 years, she had been journeying back and forth between this hidden dungeon and her primary one. Eugene's mind raced, connecting the dots. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit, but a single, burning question remained: why this specific location? The mage remained silent. His terror of his master was clearly more potent than his fear of death itself. Eugene leaned in closer, his voice a menacing whisper, offering one final choice. Tell me everything and I'll grant you a swift end. Or, stay silent and face whatever unspeakable horrors Amelia has in store for failures like you. The mere thought of that terrifying sorceress was all the motivation the man needed. The choice was painfully easy. The terrified mage began to talk. He spilled everything. This labyrinth was constructed for the sole purpose of accelerating the desert's expansion. He explained that while many such places exist, this one was special. It was originally built 10 years ago, he went on, explaining that 6 years prior, the labyrinth underwent a massive expansion following an underground collapse. They initially dismissed it as unstable terrain until their digging uncovered a colossal, magically sealed gate buried deep within the earth. They exhausted every method trying to breach it, but the seal proved to be impossibly powerful. And so, they summoned Lady Amelia Merwin for her unique expertise. Now it all made sense. Eugene listened intently, absorbing every last detail as a dawning realization spread across his face. It seems the secret to how a villain *** becomes strongest. Manhwa hides *** behind ancient seals. With all the information he needed, he honored the mage's final request, granting him a swift and merciful end. The man's body slumped lifelessly to the ground. There could be. Eugene now stood alone in the cavern, the sole survivor surrounded by the corpses of those foolish enough to stand in his path. As the final mage fell, the sand magic that had ensnared Raman finally dissipated. The captain was free at last. However, the danger was far from over. Everything started to click into place for Eugene with a grim certainty. No wonder these so-called fighters were so utterly pathetic. They were never an army, they were nothing more than glorified guards for Amelia Merwin, a disposable force designed to eliminate anyone who stumbled too close to her secrets. Raman staggered over, his voice laced with urgency as he placed a trembling hand on Eugene's shoulder. "Young master," he breathed, his face pale with sheer terror. He recognized the name Amelia Merwin, and he knew they had to get out of there immediately. "This is a den of the Blackthorn," he whispered, "a place spoken of only in legends and with great fear." But Eugene merely smirked, completely unfazed. "But we've already come so far," he retorted, a dangerous glint sparking in his eye. He then reassured Raman, expressing his doubts that Amelia herself was even present here at this very moment. "Her primary dungeon is a great distance from here, so it's unlikely she visits this location frequently." Raman, however, remains unconvinced, arguing that she could return at any second. His voice cracks with palpable fear, but Eugene calmly reasons that even if he were to flee, she would almost certainly hunt him down regardless. She's the kind of person who eliminates anyone that trespasses on her territory and causes a disturbance. He spreads his arms wide, a look of grim acceptance etched onto his face. "Fleeing is pointless. We're bound to cross paths with her one way or another." He silently admits to himself that he desperately wanted to avoid a confrontation with her, but now his hand has been forced. Raman observes him, recognizing the unwavering resolve gleaming in the young man's eyes. Eugene then turns to him, his curiosity genuine. "So, tell me." Raman's answer is simple, his voice firm. "You have saved my life on 2 separate occasions, young master." The captain then makes a solemn vow, placing a hand over his heart. Should Amelia Merwin return, he pledges to sacrifice his own life to ensure Eugene's escape. Eugene can only scoff at the notion. "And you do that with what skills, exactly?" He urges Raymond to simply return home, insisting this isn't his battle. But the captain staunchly refuses, his loyalty absolute. "I cannot possibly leave you here, young master." Eugene lets out a sigh. While he appreciates this, he cannot allow the man to get himself killed over this. In a flash, he closes the distance between them. A single, precise strike to the back of the neck is all it takes. Raymond crumples to the ground, unconscious. Eugene gazes down at him, a flicker of frustration in his tone. "I told you to leave, so why must you insist on following me?" He carefully positions the captain to rest safely against a nearby wall before turning to face the encroaching darkness alone. Some burdens, after all, cannot be shared. His thoughts drift back to what the mage had. The labyrinth was expanded 6 years ago. A chilling realization begins to dawn on him. 6 years ago, he was only 13. That was the very year of his blood succession ceremony. It was the same year he was granted access to the Lionheart family's treasury for the first time. The very same year he discovered Hamill's artifact. A memory flashes through his mind, his younger self, staring at the necklace he had earned as a reward. He clutches that very necklace in his hand now, the timeline snapping perfectly into place. This labyrinth. It collapsed 6 years ago, at the exact moment he claimed this artifact, shattering the ancient magic that was sealing his own grave. His expression contorts into a mask of pure, cold fury. And who else would appear the moment his long-lost grave was unsealed? Amelia, you damned grave robber. He now stands at the precipice of a deep, dark chasm that has split the earth. Staring down into the abyss, everything is starting to make sense. This place, this entire conspiracy. It all revolves around him because somewhere in those depths lies his grave, the very place a legend who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his final secrets. With rage burning in his heart and the weight of 300 years on his shoulders, Eugene takes a resolute step forward. He is going down there. He is going to witness for himself what that monster, Amelia Merwin, has done to his final resting place. Without a moment's hesitation, he leaps into the abyss, his cloak billowing as a torrent of azure mana swirls at his command. He masterfully controls his descent with practiced ease, plummeting like a stone through the oppressive darkness, heading straight for the heart of this entire conspiracy. Far below, his eyes lock onto it. A massive, reinforced door embedded in the cavern floor. This must be the gate the mages were referring to. He muses. He lands with a solid thud, the residual mana dissipating around him. At long last, he's here at the entrance to his own tomb. But his gaze narrows as he immediately notices the giant door is slightly ajar. His expression instantly darkens. It's open, he thinks grimly. Amelia Merwin must have already breached it. Without a shred of hesitation, he slips through the opening. He descended ever deeper into the silent, chilling darkness below. Finally, his boots touched down on ancient, hallowed ground. His gaze swept across a vast, pillared hall, but the grand chamber was in utter ruins. The floor was shattered, and the colossal walls were deeply cracked. The evidence of a truly massive battle was everywhere he looked. He understood instantly what this devastation signified. These were the scars of a legendary fight. A fierce battle had clearly raged right here, within the sanctity of his own grave, and a single name surfaced in his thoughts. Sienna, the image of his oldest companion. He moved deliberately through the desolate hall, the sharp echo of his own footsteps the only sound to break the crushing silence. With wide eyes, he absorbed the devastating scene, the very air thick with the ghosts of old memories and a profound sense of loss. And then, his gaze fell upon it. Standing at the far end of the hall was a statue, a perfect effigy of himself from 300 years prior. It was his face, flawlessly captured in stone, right down to the familiar scars and the defiant scowl. It was undeniably Hamill thus, and a strange, broken laugh escaped his lips. Escapes him a sound caught between sheer disbelief and a tidal wave of nostalgia. He draws nearer to read the inscription. It began with his name and the years of his life, but beneath that, inscribed in what he instantly recognized as his friend's distinct handwriting, were more words. It was a string of their familiar crude insults. Damn idiot, bastard, and worthless trash. Yet directly below the barrage of it, the tone shifted completely to read, but brave, faithful, wise, and great, and the final line struck him with the force of a physical blow. In praise of you, who sacrificed everything for our sake and left us far too soon. The weight of it was simply too much to bear. He clamped a hand over his mouth, hot tears streaming down his cheeks, all the praise, all the love he'd never once heard while he was alive. It was all right here, etched in stone for eternity. He choked back a sob, his voice thick with emotion. You should have said all this when I was alive, you absolute idiots. What's the point of carving it on my tombstone after I'm already gone? He wrenched his gaze away from the statue, utterly overwhelmed. I couldn't have seen it, damn it all. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto a nearby piece of rubble, the emotional tempest leaving him completely drained. As a fragile calm settled over him, he surveyed the destruction. The battle that occurred here must have been incredibly fierce, and yet the statue and its memorial stone remained completely untouched. He knew just how powerful Sienna was. She was an absolute monster in a fight. That was true even back then, and he could only guess at the heights of power she must have reached after his death. She was, without a doubt, one of the greatest archmages in the world. But the evidence before him was undeniable. Sienna had not been victorious here. If she had won, she never would have permitted his grave to remain in such a disgraceful state. A chilling thought crossed his mind, what if she had died? But he quickly dismissed it, recalling the allusion in Aroth that had been a message from Sienna herself. She had survived. He arrived at a grim conclusion. She must have sustained a grievous injury during the battle, forcing her to retreat and go into hiding. But who could possibly accomplish such a feat? The kind of terrifying power that forces a hero who *** becomes strongest. Manhwa hides *** their presence to survive. Who could defeat the Wise Sienna? Was it a demon? Or perhaps even a demon king? The thought alone was terrifying, and pushing himself back to his feet, he knew that sitting here and speculating would yield no answers. He had to find her. But first, he resolved to search the area thoroughly. There might be other clues left behind in the chaos. He began to wander through the wreckage, his mind drifting back to the past. Sienna, Anise, Molan, they had built this place for him. He could almost picture them here, painstakingly setting up his statue, all of them likely crying their eyes out. But then, a question formed in his mind. Did Vermouth cry? He tried to conjure the image, but his mind drew a blank. The great hero, his eternal rival, actually shedding tears? The very idea seemed impossible. He recalled how it always was with him. After a major battle, while everyone else was celebrating their victory, Vermouth would simply stare at his wounded friends. He would shoulder all the blame himself. You shouldn't have been hurt, he would always say, his voice laced with guilt. I should have done better. A memory flashed through his mind, his own younger self, scowling at Vermouth's relentless self-criticism, with Anise right there beside him. She had looked equally exasperated. He vividly remembered yelling at the hero, "Hey, what are you? A god or something? You're just as human as the rest. If you truly believe you can handle everything alone, then what in the hell are we doing here with you?" He remembers the sting of those. Anise, ever the saint, would immediately chime in, telling him to stop cursing at Sir Vermouth. He recalls the defiant smirk he gave her in return. Anise, don't play innocent. I literally just saw you click your tongue at him. You think I can't tell you feel the exact same way? Anise, completely flustered, would always have a ready excuse. That wasn't aimed at Sir Vermouth. The memory almost brings a smile to his lips. They were all gloriously insane. But the warmth vanishes, replaced by a sudden, sharp pang of grief. Damn it, dwelling on the past is just making me emotional. He'd give anything to have just one more of their foolish arguments. Abruptly, his senses scream a warning, and he snaps back to the present, his eyes instantly sharp with alarm. Across the hall, shrouded in shadows, is another door, a smaller, more ornate one that was most certainly not part of his friend's design. A door, he thinks, a wave of confusion washing over him. He cautiously pushes it open, a low groan echoing through the deathly silent tomb. Peering inside, he sees a figure sitting on the floor, completely encased in heavy plate armor, and behind that figure rests yet another sealed door. A secret within a secret. His gaze hardens into steel. But who is that? He steps into the chamber, his voice ringing with authority. State your purpose, and explain why you are sitting in front of that door. With a grating screech of metal on stone, the armored figure begins to It rises slowly, with chilling deliberation, to its full, intimidating height. A knight in imposing black armor now stands before him, sword in hand. Eugene sizes up his opponent. A demon? No, the presence feels different. Then he realizes what's missing. I can't sense any life force. The horrifying realization crashes down on him, his face twisting in revulsion. Undead, he snarls. I asked who you— The knight's helmet turns towards him as 2 points of crimson light ignite within its visor. A voice, ancient and hollow, echoes in the confined space. I am myself, Hamill, the Foolish. Eugene's mind goes utterly blank, his eyes glazing over in pure, unfiltered shock. In an instant, that shock boils over into a rage so fierce it feels as though his very blood is set ablaze. The Death Knight simply gazes down at him. "You claim to be Hamill? Don't insult my intelligence. You're just a Death Knight who has deluded itself into thinking it's the genuine article." Then, the final, most sickening piece of the puzzle slams into place with brutal clarity. His teeth grind together with immense pressure. This is Hamill's grave, so that means the Death Knight's body is. He lunges, all rational thought consumed, replaced by a single, burning imperative. "Take your helmet off." The Death Knight remains motionless, its glowing red eyes fixed upon him, a silent, mocking sentinel guarding its desecrated prize. Eugene erupts in a violent blast of purple energy, his voice a raw, desperate roar that shakes the very foundations of his own defiled tomb. "I said, take it off. To be forced to face your own stolen body, twisted into a grotesque monster by a grave-robbing witch. This is no mere fight for survival. This is a battle for his very soul." A deafening crash resounds as his foot connects with the Death Knight's helmet, a blow packed with 300 years of pure, concentrated rage. But the undead warrior doesn't even flinch. Eugene twists in midair, landing with perfect grace. As his opponent stands ready, its silence a profound mockery. His swords ignite with purple energy, his face a mask of cold fury. The desecration is so absolute, so personal, the kind of deep wound that even one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides from the world, that the rage threatens to consume him whole. He channels that inferno into his attack, lunging forward in a blinding flash of speed and devastating power. But the Death Knight meets him head-on, and the clash of their clashing blades unleash a shockwave that rips through the stone floor of his own tomb. As the undead warrior swings its sword, a crimson blur of demonic energy compelling Eugene onto the defensive. He twists fluidly, his movements guided by the combat instincts of his former life, parrying the strike with a sweeping arc of purple-infused energy. However, the Death Knight is already one step ahead of him. It raises a hand, and a shield of pure dark energy materializes, intercepting his counterattack. For a fleeting moment, confusion clouds Eugene's mind. A mana shield? No, that can't be right. A Death Knight wields demonic force, not mana. That was a shield of demonic force. This creature was the genuine article. Their weapons collide once more, the impact so violent it ignites a cascade of sparks into the darkened air. Eugene braces against the blow with both swords, his arms groaning under the sheer, crushing power of the undead knight. The incredible force hurls him backward, sending him skidding across the cold stone floor. He recovers in an instant, his cloak snapping around him as he readies himself for the next assault. This was no mere mindless zombie. The shock of the impact has left his hands numb. Gritting his teeth, he realizes this thing is impossibly strong. This had to be Amelia Merwin's hand. She must have desecrated his grave 6 years prior, forging a Death Knight from his very own corpse. And with his own soul long departed, she must have forced another soul inside, trapping it within his body to serve as her unwilling puppet. The grim truth of the situation settles in. A Death Knight crafted by a sorceress as powerful as Amelia Merwin, it could rival the strength of the Lionheart Patriarch, or perhaps even his formidable Grand Aunt Carmen. At his current level of power, victory was simply impossible. A low growl rumbles from his throat as his eyes burn with pure defiance. So what? So what if he was outmatched? So what if the odds were? With a defiant roar, he unleashes the Lionheart's white flame, his mana erupting in a blinding torrent around him. The very ground cracks under the immense pressure as the Death Knight thunders forward to meet his challenge. Eugene meets the charge head-on, his cloak billowing behind him like a gathering storm. He materializes a spear from his cloak, a weapon he hadn't wielded in this new life, but one he knew as intimately as the back of his own hand. The spear grinds against the massive sword in a shower of brilliant sparks. He's switching tactics, desperately searching for an opening, any vulnerability he could possibly exploit. With a powerful downward arc, he slams the spear down upon the knight's impenetrable armor. He pours every ounce of his strength into the blow, forcing the Death Knight's sword down into the stone floor. The recoil sends him staggering backward, but he's already in motion, summoning his next weapon. A battle axe materializes in his hand, glowing with that same familiar purple energy. He was now showcasing the legendary weapon mastery that had once defined him as Hamill. The Death Knight holds its ground, its crimson eyes seeming to narrow with an unnerving focus. Recognizing the fighting style, Eugene launches himself into the air, bringing the axe down in a devastating overhead cleave. He lands with explosive force, digging his heels into the fractured ground to brace against the immovable knight. He holds his position, staring down the towering monstrosity with his axe held at the ready, his face a grim mask of pure determination. This was a battle of pure skill versus raw demonic power, a classic tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true power until the very end. The Death Knight speaks, its voice cold and hollowly. "Lad, you possess a certain flair with multiple weapons." A feral grin stretches across Eugene's face.